Okay, I hope you all can hear me well and see the screen as well. If there is any issue, then please let me know. Okay, let's begin then. Hi everyone, and welcome to session number 2 of Manual Testing Project. Just a little bit of housekeeping rules. If you need to ask any question, please use the Q&A section rather than the chat section, because then I will have all the questions at one place and I can make sure that I haven't missed anyone's question. And secondly, the recording of this session will be accessible after the session. In a couple of hours, I will upload it to my YouTube channel, and you can go there and have a look if you have missed something or you want to just go through any specific topic again. You can go and watch the recording. Okay, so course outline, we went through it last time as well. And last session, we covered Agile, the basic concepts of Agile, because that's what we will be using as an SDLC for our project, which we'll be doing. In today's session, we will be going through the project overview. So now we have the basic concepts of Agile, and now we need to know that how we will apply those Agile concepts in our project. What is our project? What we are expecting from that project. So we will go through that today. Okay, so today's agenda it's more around the project. So we will, of course, introduce the project, that what is the project we will be covering. Then we will go through the team as well. So as we went through the concept of Agile in our last session, that the team in Agile is different to what a traditional project team is. So what we will do, that we will specify that who will be the team members who will be working on the project. Then we will go through the concept of user story. So user story is a very important concept in Agile based projects. So we will understand the concept of what is a user story, how we write it, what is an epic, what is an acceptance criteria. Then later on, we will go through an overview of Jira. So we will be using Jira as our project management and our defect tracking tool. So it's important that you are familiar with the key concepts of Jira. Okay, so Imtiaz, you are saying that you are not able to hear me well. Is it better? Can you please confirm if it's better now? Is anyone else having issues with the volume? Okay, so Vineet has said no. Imtiaz, can you please confirm if it's fine for you now? Because no one else is having this issue. Okay, so it's fine now. Okay, as I requested, please use the Q&A window rather than chat. So that will be easier for me. All right, let's continue. Of course, if there are any issues, please feel free to let me know. So let's continue. So the number 5 on our today's agenda will be going through the actual Jira interface. So I will give you a high-level tour of Jira, and we'll understand how to set it up and also create the project as well. Right. Okay, so let's start then. First of all, I would like to introduce the project which we will be doing today. Not today, like throughout this session. So this is basically a parking calculator which we will be working on. And what this parking calculator does is that it calculates the parking fare for customers who park their vehicles in a parking lot. So wherever there the parking is not free, and if you're going there and if there are any kind of parking meters, or you can do it with an app, so you should be able to calculate that how much you have to pay depending on for how long you will be parking your vehicle over there. So right now, because this project, okay, we are doing it in Agile, so we don't have detailed specification document for this. And we just have an overview that, okay, as of now, we know that there will be a parking calculator, and we have got some high level features that yes, the parking lot will be, there will be different kinds of parking available, like valet parking, short-term parking, economy parking, long-term garage parking, long-term surface parking. So we'll get to know about all these more in detail, because this is now just an high level thing. Then we also know that there will be an entry date and time, and then there'll be leaving date and time. So the whole idea of doing it in agile way is that as of now, in the beginning, the requirements are not mature. We don't know exactly that um, maybe these requirements will change as we move with the project. There can be changes as well, because there will be frequent feedback given by the user, whatever we are building, and maybe based on that feedback we have to make some changes. So that's all our project is about. So there is no Word document about it. Usually the product owner is representing the customer, which we also mentioned in the last session. So the product owner is basically have an either they have met the customers if we are working it for making it for a third party, or maybe a product owner has done all the analysis in the market and captured that what actually users are expecting from this kind of parking calculator, and then a product owner has given us an idea of the overview that okay, now this is the project and what we are expecting, and the requirements might evolve throughout the project. Okay, so this is the high level. Then product owner also maybe met with the UX designer, and we have got some kind of wireframe, which is really good. So it might not be available in all kind of agile projects, but if we have any kind of prototype, any kind of wireframes, that's really, really helpful. The reason is because we don't have any detailed specifications, any requirements document for agile project. So if we have a prototype, or if we have a wireframe, then it's easier to imagine that how our end project or the page will look like. And this is by no means the final one. This is basically a starting point, because we did mention this in the last session, that most of the time even customer doesn't know that what he or she is looking for, because sometimes they have something in their mind, but until they don't see it, they can't tell that okay, yeah, this is what exactly I wanted, or no, this is completely different what I had in my mind, and I actually want these changes in the interface, etc., maybe the functionality. So this is a very high level prototype, that how it will be, we have imagined that how it will be. And it shows that okay, there will be a field, drop down field for choosing a parking lot, and maybe all the options which we discussed over here of parking lot will appear over here. Then we will have an input entry date and time, and over here it can be a text field, and it can be, maybe we can also add a calendar plugin where we can choose the date for this field, or it can be simply a text field as well. Then for time as well, the same thing, that either we can input the time ourselves, or if there is any specific format given, we can specify that. And then we can choose either it's AM and PM. And now AM, PM, it can be that we can add it in the text field, or maybe there can be radio buttons where we can select whether it's AM or PM. Same is with leaving date and time. Then we will have some, based on all the options selected from these three areas, we can get the estimated parking cost when we press the calculate button. So now we got an idea in our mind seeing this, that how our project will be looking, but I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions in your mind. Like I have lots of questions, that, as I said, that, okay, I don't know that how we will capture AM, PM, how we will capture the time, because everyone can enter time in different format and it might be an issue. So these kind of things, now we have a basic layout, and now from here we can start our questions and answers session. So this is what is done in the planning session, the sprint planning session, which we went through. And that's what we will be doing when we will come to the planning section, that, okay, now based on this, we will, everyone in the team will write their own questions or their own assumptions. And then the sprint planning meeting will be the place where you mention all of that. And then as a team, you agree that how it should be. And then maybe customer can be asked the right questions as well, so that the customer also can think of it. Because in this, yes, we are keeping the focus on the customer, that how we can provide the value to the customer. Okay, and then we have some basic parking rates, which might change in the project. But of course, if we have to calculate the parking rates, we need to have some basis on that. So this is what was given by the product owner, and that different kind of parking, what will be the parking rates, because when we will calculate the parking rates based on the parameters given over here, then we will use that as basic. So basically we can use that as our test data. So now what will happen, that there are different team members, and everyone has a different objective from based on their role. Of course, the combined objective is to deliver it as the customer is expecting. But apart from that, like if the developer will be now looking at this and will be immediately thinking that, okay, that how I will develop it. Now, if the tester in the team will be looking at it, okay, what test cases I will derive from that, what scenarios would be there, what edge cases I can bring in. Okay, when they will be looking at the parking rates, okay, what will be the test data, etc. So everyone will be looking at from their expertise, their role in the team. Okay, so now the time is to meet the team. So we will be having Mike, who will be acting as the product owner of the team. Then we'll have Sophie, who is the developer. We have Sabha, who is a tester. We have Sanjay, who is another developer. We have Steve, who is the business analyst. And we have Chris, who is the Scrum Master. So we have 2 developers, 1 tester. It's a very good ratio. 2-to-1 ratio is a very good and a very balanced one. Of course, there can be other factors as well, like if we are doing a lot of automation within the team, maybe at some point we might need 1-to-1 ratio. But to start with, especially now when we are doing it manually, to start with, 2-to-1 ratio is a very good balance in the team between the developer and the tester. Okay, and then now if we think about all the Scrum roles which we discussed in our last session, we have got a very nice balance of everyone in the team. We have everyone in the team which we will need to deliver this project. And these are the team members who will be acting differently. Of course, as a tester, because our main focus in the entire project will be testing. So we will be focusing more on the tester's perspective, that what the tester activity would be. But because this is the one team approach for this project, so we can't ignore the other ones, because the tester will be heavily communicating with everyone in the team. So that's why, though our focus would be more on testing, but still we will be high level, we will be touching all the other areas as well, just to understand that how everyone is contributing in the team. And as we mentioned last time, that we don't have any project lead in an agile team. In Scrum team, we don't have anyone who is leading the project. We don't have anyone who all these roles will be reporting to in that project. So now another thing over here, yes, we have two developers over here. They are not reporting to anyone in this team, but actually they will be reporting to their development manager, who is not part of this team. So let's say that these two developers, they will be working on this project, and whenever they need any kind of support, they will go to the development manager, and the development manager should be able to help them. The same is with tester. The tester is part of this team, fully dedicated to this team, but will be actually reporting to his or her test manager. So whenever tester Sabah, she needs any help in terms of planning, yes, the test manager will help her in planning and maybe do all the planning for her, or maybe help her in doing the planning and coming out with the approach which she needs for testing, and will also help her with generating the reports if needed. So whenever any testing guidance is needed, then Sabha will approach her test manager. And same goes with business analyst as well. So sometimes there is a business analysis team separately as well. Sometimes they work independently and they have like dedicated resources and they work closely with the product owners, etc. So it depends on the layout of the organization. There is no right or wrong way in how that organization structure is, and it depends that whatever the structure and organization and company is using, based on that, whether the work stream or the project team, the Scrum team they are working in, is that working for them or not? Is it adding any value or not? And the same goes with the Scrum Master as well. It's not necessary that we have an independent Scrum Master. Yes, for the sake of this project, we have assumed that yes, there is a Scrum Master as well, which is a kind of privilege for any company, because sometimes they don't have the capacity or the budget to hire an external an independent Scrum Master. And in that case, we already covered this in last session, that a Scrum Master can be anyone else, any other member from the team apart from product owner, because product owner is representing the customer in this team. So that's why product owner can't be the Scrum Master, but apart from product owner, anyone else can be the Scrum Master. But in this case, we assume that yes, we are lucky enough to have our own Scrum Master. So this is the team, and we will be going through all these characters throughout our project. Okay. All right, next is user story. So I don't know how many of you are already aware of the concept of user story, but let's just start with the definition and let's try to understand that what is a user story and how we use it in agile projects. Okay, so user story is a small, actually the smallest piece of work that represents some value to an end user and can be delivered during a sprint. Okay, so user stories lets us define what benefits our product will bring to our target users. So over here, the focus is on delivering real value to our end users. So product functionality is captured from their perspective. So they are always the center of whatever we do in Agile project. And this enables the entire team to get a better understanding of what and why. So user story is basically comprised of like what we are doing and why we are doing. User story doesn't cover how, because how is something what the entire team discusses and then they agree on how we'll be doing it. So user story will be defined by the product owner. Most of the time, it can be the case that the product owner himself is writing the user story. So let's say we have Mike as a product owner. So Mike can be the one who is writing the user stories in the backlog, in the product backlog. Or it can be as well that Mike as a product owner has all the requirements, has um, all the requirements from the customer, but Mike is not writing it by himself. He is taking the help of Steve because Steve is the business analyst. So there are teams where we might not have business analyst. So maybe Mike is writing the stories himself, but over here we have Steve. So Steve might be writing the stories as well. Like maybe Steve is communicating with Mike and Mike is trying to convey that, okay, now this is what the customer is looking for. And the business analyst will be having more expertise in the user story area, because user story, though it seems to be very simple, but this is a skill as well. Just like a tester will be in a better shape to write a good test case. Similarly, someone who knows, who has the expertise to write a user story, he or she can write a better one. So we as a tester right now for this project, of course, we will try our best to capture user stories, which might not be the perfect ones. But yes, when a business analyst who has expertise, it's part of their role and they know better how to capture it, which are very clear, which are capturing all the basic things of the user story, which is actually then easier to implement. So in our case, what we will assume is that yes, Mike is conveying all the users, all the requirements to Steve, and with help of Steve, then both of them, they are entering the user stories in the product backlog, which then will be discussed during sprint planning session. Okay, so usually user story format is like this, like as a what kind of user, I want an action, what that type of user wants, so that a value. So this is very important to capture that who is the user, what that user wants, and then whatever the user wants, what value we are getting from that. So based on what we have our overview of the project, that okay, what the project is about. It's about a parking calculator. So we don't have all the different user stories as of now, but if I have to give you an example of an overview of what a user story would be for a project, so a high level user story can be, as a user, I want to calculate the parking cost so that I know how much it cost for the entire day. So our user is like someone who is using the parking calculator. Then what that user wants to calculate the parking cost, so that, and what value that user will get by calculating the parking cost, I know how much it cost for the entire day. Okay, so if you are already using user stories in your company, you might will see that maybe this is not the format you are getting the user stories in. Maybe it's more of a like a one-liner breakdown of requirements, which is not an ideal way of writing user stories. This is the correct format, but I have seen at many places, let's say if the team is not trained enough, or maybe they don't know how to write a proper user story, then they just break down the requirements in one-liners and assume this is the user story. To start with, that's not a bad place. It's at least you are starting from somewhere, but this is the correct format because this answers a lot of questions, and this actually helps to us, the other team members, to understand that how the entire story would be in implementation, what we are actually expecting as an outcome. Okay, so the next one, how to write a user story. As I said, that writing user story is a skill, and people who are, we have like special skilled people, business analysts, who are expert in writing the user stories, and they have many different ways of writing it, different things they capture based on the user story. But this is like the main, I would say, the base of when we are writing the user story, what we need to think of. So the first one is that list down all end users and define their problem which you are trying to solve. So there can be a system where there can be different kind of users. Now, for example, we are doing a parking calculator. So maybe we have a user who will be using it. But at the other side, maybe, which we are not capturing in this project, but maybe there will be an admin side as well of this, because all the parking fares which we are entering, maybe it's coming from another system which only an admin can access. And so in that case, then we also have an admin user as well. Or if we just take an example of any other project where we have different kind of users, they can be, maybe if we are doing an HR system, then we have an employee, we have an admin, we have uh, maybe different role levels as well. So there will be different kind of users. So whatever the project you are testing in, if you're writing a user story, first of all, you need to identify all kind of end users, that how many users are there, and then what issue they are having, which you are actually trying to solve through your user story. Because if you don't know what is the problem, then you can't suggest something which will add value, which will solve their problem. And the purpose of user story is to keep the user in the center, and then see that how we are adding value. Then the second one would be define the actions those users may take. So we already went through this format, that yes, we are identifying all type of users, and then we are also capturing all actions, that what actions those different kind of end users will take. Then identify what value this brings to the users. So that's the third one, that okay, we have got all the end users, we have captured that what actions each user may take, and then the third one would be what value that will add. And then the last one would be discuss acceptance criteria and a strategy for implementation. Okay, we will cover the acceptance criteria in a while, because that is also an integral part of a user story. And then based on all these things, then we can come up with a strategy, that okay, how we will be implementing it, and how we'll be implementing each user story is what is discussed during a sprint planning session. Okay, before we go to the acceptance criteria, there's another term which we need to know, which is epic. So now we know that user story is a smallest unit of work which we need to complete during a sprint, and which is adding any value, which is providing something of value to the customer. So user stories can be independent, or they can also be grouped together under a concept which is known as an epic. So the definition of epic is an epic is a large piece of work that can be broken down into a smaller number of tasks, which are known as user stories. So in layout terms, you can see if we are creating a new folder in our file explorer, then that folder would be epic. And then under that, whatever the files we have, those can be our user stories. Because how and when we create a folder, we create a folder when when we want to capture some similar files which are which can be grouped together under a specific feature, any specific requirement, etc. So it can be an epic, can be a feature, or it can be a business request. It can be a customer request as well. So in this case, maybe we can say that we have like a parking lot. So maybe parking lot is a feature. So we have different parking lots. So maybe parking lot can be our epic, and under that we can have user stories for different parking lots. So this is one way of doing it. So it also depends that as a team, or I would say that the product owner will define the user stories and also group in an epic. So it's more of like the product owner who defines epic and user stories. As a tester, we will never have to define the epics or the user stories, but it's always good to understand all these concepts, because we will be going through these throughout the project. So we need to understand, but don't worry, we don't have to write these. These are done by the product owner or the business analyst. Okay, so we know now that what is an epic, how it's related to the user story. It can be a feature or a business request, and usually it takes more than one sprint to complete. So a user story is the smallest unit, which ideally needs to be finished in a sprint. If we are not able to finish it in a sprint, then maybe it's not the smallest unit enough. Then maybe we have to break down the user story further. And an epic can be covered in multiple sprints. So if we have to see the relation of in this form, then we can say that, okay, there can be one epic. There can be multiple user stories in that epic. In this case, there are 4 user stories which are in this epic. And it's not necessary that we cover all those user stories in one sprint. We can cover it in 2 sprints. So user story 1 and 2, we are aiming to cover in our sprint 1, and user story 3 and 4, we might be covering it in sprint 2. And at the end of sprint, so we are delivering something end of each sprint, but we can say after we deliver sprint 2, we can say we have delivered this epic. We have completed this epic. So this is how epics are related to user stories. Okay, so now let's come to the acceptance criteria. So what is an acceptance criteria? These are basically, let's go through the definition first. So an acceptance criteria is a set of conditions that need to met in order to mark a user story as complete. Okay, so user story, we have a specific format which we went through, where we are capturing who is the user, what the user wants, what value it will add, and then on top of that, we also need an acceptance criteria for that user story, which is a set of conditions. So these conditions helps to understand better the function of the user story. Because if we are just seeing the user story, maybe we have lots of questions or lots of ambiguities, but with the help of acceptance criteria, we not only come to know the actual value of the story, but we also understand some more characteristics of the story that require attention during implementation. So acceptance criteria is an integral part of a user story. So let's say that if we just go back to our example of the user story which we captured, as a user, I want to calculate the parking cost so that I know how much it costs for the entire day. Right. So what can be the acceptance criteria of this user story? Because there can be lots of questions, and acceptance criteria is something which helps us to understand this user story better. So I have given like 2 examples. There can be many more acceptance. So there can be like multiple acceptance criteria for a user story. So the 2 which I have captured is like the cost should be shown in dollars. Over here, we are talking about parking cost, but we are not talking about that how the cost will appear, how it will be shown. So yes, this can be one acceptance criteria, that yes, the currency which we want the parking cost to be shown is in dollars. The second can be user should be able to select the date in format this. So over here we says that the value would be that it cost for what's the cost for the entire day. But over here, the entire day, of course, we have to capture the day in some format. So what is that format? It can be any format. So maybe in acceptance criteria, when we are specifying that format, so what is it's doing? It's helping us to understand the value which was defined over here. So this is like one example. There can be many more acceptance criteria, but the basic purpose of acceptance criteria is that we can't mark as our user story as complete, or in agile terms done, until this acceptance criteria has met. So this is very helpful because it makes sure that we have it's very important for testing, because in testing acceptance criteria can be kind of acting as kind of our positive scenarios for testing, that we first make sure that this story is minimum doing what the acceptance criteria is saying, and then on top of that, of course, we can add some negative scenarios as well for testing, some edge cases as well. But this helps us to identify that, yes, the basic purpose of that specific user story has fulfilled, and we have tested that as well. So it helps enormously when we are writing our test cases. Okay, so before we move on to Jira, is there any question to what we have done so far? If there is any question, please let me know. Okay, so before we start the Jira section, there would be a question which will appear on your screen now. If you can please let me know that how many of you have already used Jira, or you are familiar with Jira or not at all, then it will help me to use Jira throughout the project in that way. So I know that where I have to focus more. Okay, so I'll just give a couple of more seconds for everyone to give their views on it. All right, so seems like right now 27% of you, actually it's changing, 33% of you have used it. 33% of you have heard about it, but you have never used it. And 42% are not familiar with it at all. Okay, so we have a higher percentage who are not even familiar with Jira. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so in Jira, we will be going through the overview. What are the key concepts? What is the Jira setup which we will be using for this specific project, and then how to create a project. Yes, we will be doing it as an overview, because the purpose would not be of going through each and every detail of Jira, because that can be a separate course itself as well. And over here, yes, we need to focus more on our testing rather than Jira itself. But I'll make sure that we are able to discuss the details of Jira as much as are required for our testing of that project. Okay, so Jira is one of the most widely used tool for project management and for status tracking. So it allows a lot of options for customizing it as well as per needs. So every organization, they use Jira, who are using Jira, they use it in different ways, because the good thing about Jira is it's highly customizable. So any organization, they can customize it in their own way. So if the people who are already using Jira, you would see, if you see it somewhere else, or maybe if you have used Jira in your different jobs, you will realize that yes, it's slightly differently used as it was used in your last job, because each company has configured it in a way which works for them. Because it's not only the defect tracking tool, it's also a project management tool. So it's used by almost the entire, I would say, IT section, or maybe even wider than that, depending on how the Jira is used. So it's mostly it's used outside the IT team as well, because it's used as like a central tool for different kind of things you can do within the organization. So that's why sometimes an entire organization is depending heavily on Jira for different purposes. So over here, we will be using Jira as a planning and a tracking tool. So we are doing it in Scrum. So we will be using Scrum project in Jira to track all the activities which we need in order to develop this project, and also for our defect tracking as well. Okay, let's move on. So over here you can see a whiteboard where, I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, but maybe in few companies you would have seen the concept of using a whiteboard where there are the user stories are written in different sticky notes, and it has we just paste it on a whiteboard. In whiteboard we can make some sections like to do, in progress, done. So we make like maybe 3 columns, and then all the sticky notes, all the user stories, we put in the to do column. And as we complete each user story, we move it to, let's say, in progress, and then finally in the done state. So this is the concept of whiteboard, which works great if all the team members, they are under one roof. So if there are, let's say we don't have a very big team, we said that we have only 6 team members, and let's say all these 6 members, they are in one office, they are under one roof. So it works really, really well that they can have an access to the whiteboard where all these requirements, all these user stories are written, and they know that how many are done, how many are in progress, etc. So they can move on the sticky notes to the respective column, and every day in the daily scrum they can see that how's the progress going. So it works really well for them. But let's say if the teams are distributed in different locations, then the whiteboard concept will not work. Then we need something more digital, and which is not manual, and which can be used by all the team members who are maybe in a different location. And Jira is a good option. So because when we will start using, this is just one of the benefit of Jira. Many teams, even if they are working together in one location, even then as well, when you will start using Jira, you will see that there are much more benefits of using any tool like Jira. So that's why we can say that it's kind of like a digital form of a whiteboard. And Jira is a tool which is owned by a company known as Atlassian. There are many other products as well from that company, but for now we are focusing on Jira. Okay, so now coming next one is that there are two types of Jira which we can get. We can have a Jira Server, or we can have a Jira Cloud. So in your company, they might be using Jira Server or they might be using Jira Cloud. You as a tester doesn't need to do all these setups and installations. You will be just using it. Your account will already be created in Jira, and you will be given your credentials and you will be using Jira. But as an overview, it would be good to understand that, okay, that what kind of interfaces, instances we have out there in the market. So Jira Server is where when it is installed in a specific data center of that organization. So it can be installed on premises, like in their data center on their network, or in a private cloud for that organization. So when in that case, then they have to install it on their network, and then that company is responsible for configuring and also maintaining it on their server. So this is how a few companies, they opt for Jira Server. While on the other hand, few companies, they go for Jira Cloud, and Jira Cloud is which is hosted by Atlassian. So over there, they don't, any company, if they are using Jira Cloud, they don't have to do all the installation or maintenance or configuring, though the prices might be different for both of them. And each company, they decide that what works well for them. So both of these instances, they offer same functionality, but they appear a little bit different. And for this one, we will use Jira Cloud. For this course, we will be using Jira Cloud. Okay, so before we move on to the actual tour of Jira, there are some key concepts which we need to understand. So let's familiarize ourselves with these concepts, because we will be using these concepts over and over again in our project. So that's why we should have an understanding of them and how they relate to each other, how we can use them in our project. Okay, so the central concept of that is an issue. So when we listen this term, issue, it depicts like there is a problem or something like that, but in this case, it's not that. An issue in Jira is any item which you want to track the status of. So it is a generic term, but as I said, it doesn't mean any problem. It's not in like a negative way. It can be, an issue can be a user story, it can be an epic, it can be a bug, etc. So it depends that what kind of issue we are talking about, but generically these are our basic issues, and we can always customize it as well. So that's the best thing about Jira, that when you will install Jira, by default there are few issues which are already there, and then we can add as many issues as we need based on our project, based on the workflow. So we now know what is an issue. So what kind of issue, then that's the next question. It is specified by the issue type. So which comes next, that what is the type of the issue. So there can be different types, and we can add additional issue types as well. So as I said, that an issue can be an epic, so that's basically an issue type. that we have an issue and the type of that issue is an epic. Then we have a type of issue which is a user story, or we have a bug, or we have maybe a task, a subtask. So these are all issue types. Then after that, an issue, an issue also has a status. So we can define a status workflow, how it works, and we can customize the statuses as well. So let's say that if we have an issue type, which is a bug, then we can define the statuses that maybe we want it as open as one of the status, then we want one of the status as close, we want the status as maybe duplicate, that maybe two people have reported the same bug, and then we can keep one open and we can mark the other one as duplicate, so we know that this was the duplicate. Then we can also mark the status as rejected, that maybe we log down a bug, an observation, but later on with the discussion with the other team members, we come to know that, okay, this is not a valid bug, so we can mark it as rejected. All these metrics then help us in the reporting part of the project. So that's why the way we are capturing status of each issue is really, really important and is highly customizable. We can customize it as per the need of our project. Then we have fields. So when we will see the issue, it has issue types, then we have status, then each issue will have different kind of fields in that issue, and that fields can be again customizable. We can have a description, that okay, that what's the description, and the description for each issue type might be different. Maybe in a user story, maybe description can have an acceptance criteria, or maybe we can have a separate field for acceptance criteria. Most of the times it's just added in the description with the heading of acceptance criteria, but it can change, we can customize it. And if we are talking about a bug, then in description area we can identify the steps which we want to specify in order to reproduce that bug, that how we got that bug. So those kind of things can be mentioned in the fields. They can be different fields, like the priority field of that that issue, etc., or whom that issue is assigned to. That can be fields as well. So when we create any specific issue in Jira, there are few fields which are the default fields, but there are also some custom fields which we can customize. We can add as many fields based on how we want to use it. Right. Okay. So then all issues, we have spoken about issue and how they are related to issue type, status, and fields. So now all issues which we create in Jira, it belongs to a project. So one instance of Jira can have multiple projects at a time, because yes, we have spoken about one specific project, we have spoken about one specific team, but in one organization there can be multiple projects going on at the same time. So the Jira instance would be the same, but they will be different projects. Right now, of course, we are talking about a specific project, so we will focus on that yes, all the issues, they are related to the project. Okay, then comes the workflow. So a project, it has one or more workflows. So workflow basically controls that what statuses and issue they may transition between, and what are the roles for those transitions. So for example, we just discussed the issue, which is issue type, which is a bug, and how the status would be different. So let's say we just mentioned that they can be an open status, it can be reject, it can be close. So whenever we are selecting a status, there is a workflow behind which we have defined, that let's say if we have have, as a tester, if I have reported a new bug, by default, it will go to the open state, and then all the open bugs will be assigned to the developer in that project. Or maybe the team has decided that, okay, don't assign the bugs directly to the developer. First, they need to be reviewed by, let's say, a business analyst. So maybe then we have defined the rule that all bugs, they go to the business analyst first, and the business analyst maybe then decide that whether it's a valid bug or not, and then define and then assign it to a developer. So there can be different rules which you as a team can discuss and then apply that. So we can define all these workflows and everything in Jira. As a tester, again, we don't have to define the workflows, but yes, if there is anything which is not working well, or any team member who has found any kind of a gap in the workflow, we can tell it to let's say the product owner, because most of the time the product owner is also the admin of that project, or maybe there is another team who is administrating the Jira workflow. So you can decide as a team, and then you can ask the admin to do the changes for you. You as a tester never has to do the changes yourself, but you can definitely give your input, because let's say that when we will work more, we'll get to know by default there is never a status type of reopen. But as a tester, I want to know that if I have reported a bug and it's fixed and I have tested it again, then still it's not fixed, then I don't want it to go to the open state. I want it to go to the reopen, because at the end, I will have the metrics of how many bugs were reopened, because every time it was reopened, it has wasted my time as a tester for retesting, and then it has also wasted the developer's time as well, because earlier they fixed it, but later on we come to know that, okay, that it was not fixed. So it is so this is something which can be helpful, and it can be an important metric for me as a tester, and also for the entire team to see that what's the quality of code which is being deployed. So these kind of things you can always customize as per your need. Okay, so as I said that as a tester, you will not define these workflows, but it's good that you know that how it works. And if you're not satisfied, you can always suggest to get it changed. Okay, the last thing on this page would be board. So boards in Jira is the place where you will spend most of your time. So a board is a view on issues of a project, but sometimes issues from other projects can also be pulled in. So most of the time it will be issues from your project, but maybe there is a specific functionality where it is interacting with another system. Remember, we said that a component can interact with another component or system as well. So maybe if there is another system, another team is working on that, but there is one thing which is linked to that, then maybe we can like have that as well in our project, in our board. Okay, so and board is like kind of what we can say the digital form of the whiteboard, which we already discussed. So it will be kind of that. So it shows different lanes for the statuses. You can drag or drop to update an issue status. So now we have all the key concepts. So if you have any question, let me know. Otherwise, we will go to the actual Jira interface. I will show you that. So let's see if we have any. Okay, I have got one question from Rupal. Rupal is asking, in acceptance criteria, we write test cases. No, Rupal, acceptance criteria is not written by testers. Acceptance criteria is written by the product owner, or I would say the business analyst. But of course, even if business analyst is writing the acceptance criteria, it's driven by the product owner, because product owner is specifying that what customer is looking for. So acceptance criteria is part of user story, and user story is not written by the tester. Yes, I said that the user story and the acceptance criteria can help us in identifying the test cases. It can help us in when we will be writing our test cases, because let's say if we just go back to that the same example where we said that the cost should be in dollar, so which means that we can write a test case to check that, yes, make sure that uh, the cost is appearing as dollars. So acceptance criteria can help us in writing valuable test cases, but test cases and acceptance criteria is totally different activities. So I hope that this answers your question. Is there anything else, or should we just move on to our JIRA tour? Okay, so there is no other one. So what I will do, I will now share another screen. I hope this works well. Okay, I have just moved to another screen. Let me know if you can see the Google page now. Can please, any one of you can let me know? Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Pallavi. All right. Okay, so you don't have to install Jira yourself, but yes, if you want to do this project along with me, or you want to do it for any other project, you are most welcome to use Jira as well. So all we have to do is just type Atlassian, because that's the company who owns Jira. So we can go there, and then we can just go to their homepage. Right over here, we can go to try it free. Okay, so when you go to Atlassian page, there are different kinds of Jira instances which they are showing us, and which is, so there are a lot of other words, because few companies, they also use for their support tickets as well, the help desk one. We don't need that. Uh, Atlassian is the company, and they have many other products as well. So they have a very good product which is known as Confluence, which they also use it for documentation. So that's one option. We will not doing that as well. We will be going for the Jira software, because that's like the basic thing which we need, which will fulfill all the needs of our project. So we will be going for the Jira software option. Okay, so now this is the cloud one. So the cloud one is free, and it has access to the free features of Jira. Of course, there will be few features which will be advanced and might not be available free, but to start with, to get an idea of Jira, I think this is a very good option. Then it also gives 2 GB storage, and it's free for up to 10 users, and it also has the community support as well. So if you want to use Jira, I would suggest that you go for this one. If you want to use the Jira server, then what you can do, you can specifically Google like Jira server download, and you will be taken to that. I think that one just offer a 30-day trial period, and then you have to do the installation and configuration yourself. You can still do it, but I would suggest that this one is more easy to use as a new person. So right now over here, I have already created my account. So otherwise over here, you can just enter your details and you will be, taken to this interface. So I have already created my account. You can just give the credentials and you will be having login created. Okay, I think I have a question. Let me see what it is. Okay, Imtiaz is asking, we have a mobile version. Um, that's a good question, Imtiaz. Actually, I don't know if there is a specific app, a native app for Jira, but if you are accessing it cloud, then you can access it from anywhere. So like you can use the, of course, the web version in mobile as well. There is no reason why you can't use it. But yes, if you are using Jira Server, that wouldn't be available because for security reasons, some companies, they opt for the Jira server on top of the Jira cloud or their own cloud because they don't want it to be available publicly, because they have all the project details, etc. over there, so they don't want it to be there in open, accessible by everyone. So that's why they confined it to their network. So if you are in the on the network of your company, only then you can access Jira. So that's why in that case, you will not be able to access it from mobile. But for Jira Cloud, yes, you can use use the same URL and you can go to the web version. But I have not seen that if there is a specific mobile app, a native one or not. Okay, so now when you have created your account in Jira, then this is how it will look. So personally, at my work, I'm also using Jira, but we are using Jira Server, and the interface, I would say, is slightly different. Maybe the ones who are, those of you who are using Jira Server, and if you see this one, you will see the same. So it took me a while to understand this. Yes, the main features are there, the functionalities are there, most of them, they are over there, but maybe the workflow or the navigation is slightly different, which you will get to know. But I think to start with, cloud version is really, really good for you because you don't have to go into the hassle of installing, downloading it, etc. So once you have your project over here, sorry, you have your account created, the next step is that whatever we have learned in the theory part of the interface and the most of the things which we'll be using, I will show you that. So we have dashboards. So most of the time you can, when you will log in, you will be taken to your default dashboard. So this is your default dashboard, but we can also customize the Jira dashboard, and we can add different gadgets over here, which we will be doing when we will start using it for our project. But the default dashboard right now, I haven't changed a lot in this dashboard. So so I just wanted you to have a look of the default dashboard. So it is an introduction. It gives you an introduction to Jira. Then I have created a project. So whatever the projects you have created in that Jira instance, then the projects will be coming over there. Then if there are any issues which are assigned to me, it will show me those. And with what activities I have recently done, I just created few test issues just to show that yes, how it appears in the activity stream. But this is the default dashboard and we can use it the way we want. We can customize it the way we want. So this will be our default dashboard. We are not creating another one yet, but I just want to show you that there can be multiple dashboards and you can also create your own dashboard as well. Okay, so the next one I want to show is projects. So right now I have created one project over here, but I also want to show you that how you create project. So you can always go for a project. When you will create a project, it will show you that there are two types of project. That next gen projects represent a reimagined Jira software cloud, but built from the ground up. Note that the choice you make here is permanent. The only way to switch project types is to create a new project. So what is a classical project? Classic project. It represents what Jira software has always been known for, and for the long-term Jira fans who wants to stick with what they love, controlling consistency across many teams. Then next gen projects, we are rebuilding Jira software from the ground to make it easier to set up, use, and maintain for software teams of all sizes, best for nimble independent teams. Okay, for what we want to do, it will not um, make any difference what kind of project type we are doing over here. I think I selected next gen, but I think classic would be a better option. Uh, just a minute. Oh, no, sorry. Please ignore what I said. You have to select next gen. Now I remember that why I selected next gen, because we have to do Scrum. So if you see that if we select a classic project, it takes us to Kanban. So as I mentioned in the last session, that we have different kind of frameworks available under Agile. This project, we are not doing Kanban. So yeah, we are not doing this one. We are going with the next gen project because we want it to be a Scrum based project. So over here, you can write the project name. So I will write test project. And by default, it will just take the initials of it, but of course you can change that over here as well. And because we are doing it as a Scrum project, so the template will be using it for Scrum, and you can change it if you want to. Then just create a project, right? So it has created a project over here. So over here, after creating a project, we have come to the project board. So remember, we saw all the key concepts, and we said that the board is where you will be spending most of the time for that sprint, and this is where you will see all the issues, and this is a digital representation of how we were using whiteboards before. So by default, we have these three lanes, three columns: to do, in progress, done. And we can customize it, we can change it, because sometimes maybe, okay, we can have to do, then in progress, we don't know that, because it's a very like a high level thing. So over here, we might have a confusion that in progress, does that mean that it's with the development team, or does that mean that it's in testing, etc. So we can decide as a team, and we can add as many columns over here, which actually helps us to track all the activities throughout the sprint. So we know that, okay, now these many tickets are currently with development, with developers, or these are the tickets which may be in code review, and these are the tickets which are with the tester. So we know that how many tickets the tester has still needs to work on, and then when the tester has signed off something, then the tester can move it to done. So there can be as many columns as we want over here in the board. We can customize it, we can change it. Right now, you don't see anything over here as because we haven't created any issues. And as you can see, you haven't started a sprint. So once we start a sprint, this board will be different for each sprint, and it will always show the current sprint. So whenever we start a sprint, so when we have our sprint planning session, we start a sprint, and then for rest of the sprint we will be using this board. Then when everything is done, then we close that sprint and then we start a new sprint. So that's how we will be using this board. Then I want to show you the backlog. So as you can see that there is nothing over here. So backlog will have a list of the user stories which the project owner conjunction with the business analyst have put in over here in the product backlog, which we learned last session, that the product owner defines everything which goes in the backlog, in the product backlog. So this is the product backlog. And during sprint planning session, then we discuss the ones which are on top of the backlog. So let's say that if there are 20 items in the backlog, then product owner is responsible on setting the priorities of the backlog. And then in the sprint planning session, we start from the top of the backlog, start discussing all the user stories, and then we stop when we see that, okay, now only these many user stories we can take in that specific sprint based on the velocity. So this is something which we will cover in our next session, but all the stories would be here. And then what we will do when we will start planning our sprint, we will move these stories as much as we want in a specific sprint. We will agree in the sprint planning session, and then when we agree in as a team that these are the number of stories which will be working in a specific sprint, then we start the sprint. So this is how basically a sprint will work, and that's what we will be doing in the next session, because in the next session we'll be doing all the planning. Okay, so a few more things which I want you to see when we create. So we said that there can be multiple projects. As you can see, the project which I already created for our parking calculator application, and the one which we just created right now. So we have the projects. So whenever you are creating any issue, we have to specify for which project it is. Then there can be multiple issue types. We covered this as well. So it can be a story, it can be a task, it can be a bug, it can be epic, it can be something else as well, which we can add later on over here, right? Okay, then we have a summary. So right now we have created an issue type, which is story. Then in summary, maybe we can have a one-liner, or maybe what we can do is, the best thing would be that we write the user story in the format which we discussed, that as a user, what the user wants, so that what value it's bringing. So we can write that over here. Then in description, we can write the if we have more details about this, then we can write those details. And we can also write the acceptance criteria over here. So we can have a separate heading over here as an acceptance criteria. We can write it over here. Then we can also assign it to someone. If you want to do any labels, we can do that. It depends that if we want to further categorize it and we want to label it, we can do that. Then which sprint this issue, this story is belongs to. When we will do this planning session, and the stories which we have already added to a sprint, by default it will come over there. But if we need to add or change the sprint, we can do it from here. Then the story point estimate. So next session, when we will go through the planning section, then we'll also understand how to estimate a specific user story, because that's a key part of the sprint planning session, that it depends on how much what's the estimation done by the team for that user story. It actually helps to understand that how many user stories we can actually cover practically in a sprint. If you want to, so right now I'm the reporter because I am creating this user story. Then if there is any supporting document, etc., then we can do that. So like, let's say if for the story, if we have a prototype, if we have a wireframe, then we can attach over here because that links with this user story, etc. Then if there are any kind of linked issues, so issues can link to each other. So let's say if there is an issue which blocks us to work on this user story, then we can do that as well. We can, so there are a lot of things which we can change, which we can specify over here for creating our issue. So there are different issue types. And so whatever we discussed as the key concepts, what is the issue, what is the issue type, when we will create, let's create one test user story. Right, I will leave this, and then I will just create one user story, because there's one thing which I want you to see, which is the status. Now this is the status. So right now the status is to do. So in the key concepts, we also said that there'll be a status, and of course it depends on the workflow of that specific issue type which we have defined. So we can change the statuses over here as well. So right now we have just created a user story, and by default it is in the status of to do. So this is how a user story will be looking at. And then as you can see, epic, that if we are defining multiple user stories, then we can group them into an epic. We can add an epic over here. So this is how all the concepts which we have read about earlier today, this is how it looks like, and this is the most terms which we will be using in our project. I think these will be the basic things which you need to look into, and then a few more things, maybe people. So who will be the team members? I have already added all the team members over here, which we will be working on, as we already discussed in the team. So I have already added that, so that when we are running our sprint, we actually can see that how the workflow works, and like who will be the assignee, and who will be the reporter at different stages of our project. So that will help us as well. So this is all I wanted to show you in this session. In next session, we will be going through the planning. So test planning for a traditional project is different to the way we plan in Agile, because over here we may or may not do all the detailed documents like Word documents for a test plan. So we will see that how actually the sprint planning session also helps us with the test planning as well. And on top of the sprint planning session, what else we need to do as a tester for maintaining our test plan. If we have to, do we need that or not? So that's what we will cover in our next session. So if you have any questions for what we covered today, please let me know. Okay, no questions. So I would suggest that if you are planning to go ahead and install and set up your own Jira instance, then I would suggest that you go through the slides, which what we have discussed today, and the wireframe which we have shown for the parking calculator. If you can come up with some few basic user stories. I did say that it's not our job as a tester to write user stories, but just to understand that you have captured that what we need in a user stories, start thinking about it, that what can be the different user stories. So if you can come up with some basic user stories, that would be great. That would be a good practice for this week. And when I will do the next session, by that time I'll make sure that we already have few user stories in the backlog, because that's something which the product owner has already done. And then we will start our sprint planning session from there. Okay, we have a question. Jira Atlassian official app is there on Google Play Store cloud version. Okay, Imtiaz, that's good to know. Thank you so much. I didn't know about that. So yes, so as I said, that the server version, that that wouldn't be there as an app, because that's more secure and it's confined to the usage of a specific organization. But okay, if we have a cloud version, that's good. So yes, you can definitely use that as well. Okay, so Imtiaz again is saying, I would like to suggest all teammates to download mobile version so they can practice at any time. Yes, absolutely. So you can download that, or you can of course have the instance over here as well. And if you have an if you will create an account, and if there is a mobile app as Imtiaz is suggesting, then we can use the same login details for that as well, to log in over there as well. So whatever you are doing over here, you can do in a mobile app as well. So yes, absolutely, I agree with that. Whatever works for you is fine. You can use the same login details for the instance using on a desktop, or you can the web version or the app version as well. You can do that. You can switch between that. Okay. So that was all from my side. Is there anything else you would like to ask? All right, if there is no other question, then we can end our today's session. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining me. And after the session ends, I will upload this video later on today evening on the YouTube channel, so that you can go through. And then I will see you next week. Till then, take care.